In this video, I'm going to introduce you to a project management document called a client proposal. Now, as we've seen in previous videos, the designer has designed the pillow, selected the materials involved, has an estimate of the cost of the materials to create the pillow, and also has documented and specified all the components of the pillow. So now we go to the client and we say, okay, client, this is your pillow, and now it's time to pay for it. Now, the designer is probably presenting all of the living room selections to the client. And so this may be one of several proposals that are being showed to the client. And remember that, the client's been talking about this pillow, talking about this beautiful living room throughout the design process. So there's been some salesmanship or salespersonship kind of leading up to when the client receives this proposal. So they're not just getting this proposal like out of thin air. The designer has already kind of price conditioned them, told them about the beautiful materials being used on this pillow, how this pillow is going to really make the room, how this pillow is going to represent the concept and express the elements and principles of design. And so this is where the designer proposes the actual cost of the pillow. Now, let's look at a couple of things on this document. This is created by the designer. So you can see we've got logo on the top and information on the bottom about the contact information for the design firm. The design company's address typically is here, and then the phone number and email is provided. Now, this stays with the client. They may sign on the dotted line right during the meeting and write a check, or they may sit on this for a little bit, think about it, envision it in the room. And so you can see that information is provided so that the client can follow up with the designer later if needed. So client name and address always goes here. It's hidden here for their privacy for us today. But you can see we've got kind of a coding system related to the item number and proposal, the date that the client received the proposal, and then the printed date. Now, you can see here we have information about the room that this is going into. And you can also see the information about the item itself. Now, notice something very, very critical. I want you to pay close attention here. The information, the specification information about all of the products is not provided in this proposal, because the last thing a designer wants is for the client to know the exact name, item number, manufacturer of each product, because in this day and age, they may be able to just go and find it themselves. And not only that, maybe in a rare circumstance, be able to find out how much the designer paid for the item. And so sometimes designers like to keep that markup private, or they don't disclose it at every point in the designer client relationship. In either case, that very specific information, that's the specification information, is not provided here on purpose. Instead, what we see is a beautiful description about the material and a very nice photo, high resolution photo. Now, these could get a little bit bigger possibly, but you can see it's got the quantity, the unit, and the unit price and the total price. Now, if we go back to the estimate, you can see here the unit price here is 47 yards for this trim. But if we go back really quickly, we can see that actually the cost of the designer is $23.50. So let's take a look. $23.50. So you can see here that the price has doubled. So the designer is marking up 100% each of the products, but the client may be aware of that or may not. Now, The designer may also tell the client, I'm going to give you retail price on everything. And the retail price of this may be $47. It's just that the designer has an arrangement with the manufacturer where they get a discount. So you can see they've got the total price of 6 times 47, 282, and then freight. This is the cost, the shipping cost. And depending on the contract, the client generally pays that cost directly. So the designer doesn't mark up the cost of the freight. Okay, you can see here, once again, we've got the tape for the sofa pillows, 3 yards, $159 a yard for a total of $477. Now that cost, if we go back to our estimate, the cost of this material was actually $79.50. It was really expensive. And so you can see there's a markup there as well. Now, this fabric was, again, from the designer's inventory, and cost was $65 a yard, and you can see it's marked up to $130 with a total 2 times 130 is 260. And then once again, you can see the labor as well has gotten marked up. So this proposal goes to the client. The client can take their time and look at it, and the designer has hidden all the information that someone would need to order it and has instead replaced the information with a beautiful description here that sells it to the client. And then it has the price. Now, let's look at this here. The subtotal is $13.59 for all these elements. Freight is $86.36. And then sales tax. The designer actually has to charge the client sales tax and then pay taxes in a lump sum to the state later. So you can see here, this is interesting. This is actually the deposit requested is the total cost. And that's probably because this is a custom job and there really wouldn't be a way to provide someone a refund for this. But this goes back to the client's, the designer and owner, designer-client contract. How they pay for things and the payment schedule is directly related to the terms in the contract. Sometimes the proposal will request that the client pays half now and half upon delivery. But in this case, this designer wants all the money up front. Kind of interesting. And so you can see that we're calling out that deposit here, and the currency is in US dollars. And so the idea is that the client is going to sign their name here, and then this would actually have the client's name. But once again, we've got it hidden for privacy. So they would sign it and date it, and they would send this proposal back after they've reviewed it with the check for, or the cash for $1,359. And so this is the document from the designer to the client that the client then returns back. And this really initiates the process.